we'll just kiss each other for no specific reason. And people find it very strange that two older people do that. People in the street stop us. Have you guys just got married?
How can you not love this guy? He's hot. He's the hottest grandfather in town.
Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Welcome back to another episode of Couples Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean, and this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Please check us out online at couplessynergy.com or on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn at Couples Synergy. And please subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, or send us any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couples Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring you our experience helping thousands of couples transform their relationships for over 20 years.
Everyone says you should work on your relationship, but nobody teaches us how. So we've created this podcast to teach people what they can do to create the relationship they've always dreamed of
with the partner they fell in love with. On today's episode, we welcome Francesca and Stan Levine. Together, they are the only Australian couple trained to teach hot monogamy and the only Australians trained in encounter-centered couples therapy. Besides being accomplished clinicians in couples work, I would think their greatest accomplishment is being married for 55 years. Thank you so much for being on our show today, Stan and Francesca. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
So we definitely want to, cover your work and talk about, what you have done with couples for so many years, and also talk about, what you're trained in that no other Australian is trained in as well. But before we get into that, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about what brought you into the field to begin with?
Well, it's a great question, because before becoming a psychologist and psychotherapist, I had a career in import-export and in fashion and being a high school teacher. So how did I get into this? It was a car accident that knocked me out. And I was probably depressed seriously for a year and learned a lot about depression, and went back to university and did my postgraduate psych because I already had a bachelor's, and decided to do what I really had always wanted to do. And that's how I got back into it, literally by accident. So a book that I'm wanting to write is called Shit into Gold. Pardon, well, you might bleep that out, but that's what it's going to be called. And it's essentially, there's something good in everything, every cloud has a silver lining. And I think that accident was probably meant to happen. Otherwise, I'd still be importing and exporting. And, I was the first person to get a sale in America of Australian goods.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. That's a whole other fantastic story. But yeah, so that's how I got into it by accident. And how Stan got into it, I'll just start and he'll tell you the rest. Do you know of Havel Hendricks and Helen? Okay.
Margot therapy, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I had trained long distance with Havel for some years because I saw him on Oprah and loved him immediately. Mm-hmm. And then he didn't come. A trainer came to Australia, but in order to do the training on the other West Coast, we had to do a couples workshop. So we did. And at the workshop, at one of the breaks, I said to the person running the workshop, I said, I have a problem with this. I don't want to go to Perth 3 times a year without Stan. And she said, well, he can come. I said, oh, cool. So without asking any further questions, I raced into the tea room and I said, darling, guess what? You're coming to Perth. And he looks at me shocked because, it's not unusual for me to come in with some wild idea. And he said, why? And I said, oh, good question. You can tell the rest.
Well, what happened was I was about to retire. I was a lawyer, and I was about to retire. And because of this workshop, I was the other half of the couple, and Fran had to do the workshop. So I said I'd do it with her. When she told me about this thing in Perth, which is, 4,000 kilometers away from where we live, I said, well, what the hell am I going to do there? She said, well, the lady said you can do the course as well. I said, well, what would I do the course? It didn't make any sense to me. Anyway, I agreed to do it, and we went, and I just fell in love with it the very first day of the training. And I felt just it was a natural for me. And so I decided, forget retiring. This is what I'm going to do. And that was it. That was about 18 years ago.
Yeah, so he's a natural. I started forever. He walks in, bang.
Well, I had no preconceived ideas, and I think
helps.
that helps.
So that's how we got to working together.
Can you guys tell us the story of how you met?
Oh,
Sure.
yeah. It was a blind date.
We met on a blind date. It's the only one I've ever been on because I had recently broken up a 3 months engagement. I think 18's a little young to get engaged. And so I agreed to go on a blind date. And for me, was love at first sight. That's it. I made up my mind within a minute. Okay, that's him. Done. I was already planning my dress, the whole deal. It's a bit slower, as you probably gathered by now. So I've changed that word slow to thorough, but I used to say slow.
Well, I was slow. I mean, I did fall in love straight away, particularly with her eyes. She's got incredible eyes. And that was what hit me when I first saw her. And I'd been on a number of blind dates because I'd recently come back from 2 years traveling overseas. And most of my friends were sort of either engaged or in relationships. So when I saw her, that was it. But I was very slow, as she says. And it took me a long time.
A year.
Over a year before I felt I could commit. Anyway, I did, and that was it.
And how old were you guys back then? And what was it about your partner that you fell in love with?
She was fun. Lots and lots of fun. And really, it's so important in any relationship.
Well, he says he loved my eyes. I loved his voice. I loved his overall impression. When my mother first met him, she loved him because he said, you better take a coat, it's cold. So as far as she was concerned, he was a keeper. He was just, and still is, so handsome. Right? He ticked all the boxes. He could cook. I couldn't and wouldn't. And I still rarely do. And he loves cooking. He's the most superb dancer. I could never be with someone who doesn't dance, just not on. And super intelligent. So it took me about half an hour to find out why I was in love with him. I'm quick. I made one mistake. I said, do you mind if I smoke? And he said, yes. And I thought, oh, what do I do now? So we went out. I had 9 cups of coffee. Okay. But I found him fascinating because he had traveled overseas. I had never left Victoria since coming as a migrant. And I was just fascinated, so he's intelligent, handsome, cooks, dances. What more could any girl want? And he was tall, dark, and handsome. He's still maybe a little shorter, not dark, but he's still handsome. And he's got all the qualities that he had before and added. How can you not love this guy? He's hot. He's the hottest grandfather in town.
So that's how we met.
Yeah, and what about for you, Stan?
Well, first of all, as I said, the first thing I noticed was her eyes. And I still see them all the time. And I think one of the things that stayed with me is being able to really look at her face, focus on her. And I still do that. And I think a lot of couples don't. They sort of start to take each other for granted and don't really look at each other.
You liked that I wasn't spoiled.
She
that
was.
meant
That's
a
true.
lot.
She wasn't spoiled. She wasn't looking for, what's the word?
Someone rich.
Yeah, she wasn't looking for someone rich, which was just as well, because I wasn't. And she's just a natural and very spontaneous. And as I said, the big thing was fun. And she still is. I never know from one day to the next what she's going to come up with.
I don't either.
And it's been like that all the time. And so I've never been bored. You couldn't be bored with Fran. It's impossible.
And how many children do you guys have?
2, 1 boy, 1 girl. And between them, they have 5 children. So we have 5 incredible grandchildren, ranging in age from 14 to 22.
And
Fabulous.
3 grandpuppies.
Yeah, 3 grandpuppies.
They
We
always
just became grandparents. Our granddaughter's 2 months old, almost 3 months old.
First grandchild.
That's amazing. You're so lucky. This is your best time, isn't it?
Yeah,
It is. It definitely is.
So at what point, how many years were you guys married before you went to that class with Harville Hendricks?
Oh gosh, that's a good. I know. So Joshua's 18. No, it's 18. So how many years were we married? 30.
33, I think.
And we'd been married a long time.
You know, we've noticed a lot of differences with couples that are younger, that they can only get so much of this work. You really have to be in it and have a mature brain to really get into the depth of a lot of stuff, which is really fabulous. Would you agree with that? Or
I would agree with it partly, but I think, and this is also about my brain and what I can do, I think to keep it simple, like your website, seriously. And that's connecting. The thing is also they pick up on our energy, and that helps, right? So I think we've won them over before we
open our mouths,
without effort. So yes, it helps to have intelligent people. Yes,
we've seen that couples kind of go through different stages, of development in their relationship, and those couples that have been together longer than 15 years, longer than 20 years, they seem to be in a very different stage and have learned a lot more, about commitment than couples who are just brand new in their relationship.
Sure.
Well, because I think the challenges arise once you've been together for a while, and it's how you deal with them. Some people, of course, don't deal with them and they split up. And those who stay put the effort in to learn what they can do, and that strengthens the relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you guys weren't really seeking out help for your marriage. You were seeking out education so you could help others. What did you discover in that process?
Funnily enough, I discovered something, not so much, well, I discovered how good he was at it. And, we do work together, which helps. And I guess you guys do too, to have, the male and female in the room. But I learned a lot about our children because we did some training videos, and one in particular, it's a parent-child dialogue where you play the role, the energy of the parent, and the child says, no, the question is, what is your deepest hurt with me? Okay. And I did this video with our son. He would have been how old? How old was he? In his 20s anyway. I'm terrible with ages. I just make them up. So I'll just say I don't know. And so I said to him, so what's your deepest hurt with me? And he said, you didn't talk to me. And I'm thinking, what? I said, oh, tell me more about that. And he did. You always talk to my sister, he says, blah, 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 blah. And, the thing is not to react and say, well, actually, you didn't talk much either. So it was pretty hard to talk to you. So, like a boy, he just gave monosyllabic responses. So I didn't think he wanted to talk, but now he's talking.
Oh, it's amazing.
So I learned a lot about that. I learned about Stan, how flexible he is. You know, he had been a lawyer. He had run his own restaurant. He had run his own cake and cookie company. And now he's doing this. And I think flexibility is key. All right? You don't have flexibility, you're stuck and you might proverbially die. And he's very flexible. He has to be to live with me. What?
It's true.
Well, he said a woman should be mysterious.
Yeah, I did say that to her when we were going out.
Yes.
And
Well,
originally, a long time.
I filed it up here and said, okay.
She's never let me forget it.
So, yeah, so I learned a lot about him and how much he loves to learn. You know, I've done a lot of training, and he's now doing training, because I think our field is so rich and there's so many things. Yeah, you would know that. And I love the fact that he wanted to learn and just stepped into another role. Right? I don't know how he looks to you, but he's not young. And he, you know, his friends are either retired or dead. So and he's still in there and firing away, and it's so easy to inspire him to another level. I'll just say, hey, how about? And he goes, okay. You know, and he trusts me, and that's a wonderful thing, and I trust him. You know, so we don't have to explain a lot of things. So that all came up during the training as well, that he could do that, right? I didn't ever think that we would work together, and there you go, we do.
You know, one of the things that I find really powerful with Harville Hendricks' work is that the training, a lot of people who do that kind of work and get trained in it are couples.
Yes.
And, you know, we find that being a married couple, kind of, you guys were talking a little bit about that, is a powerful force for change, just in being role models, right?
Yes.
Just being kind of mentors in a way. And,
Yes.
you know, there's the theory of the couple personality, right? That a couple that comes together in a room, they create this third entity, which is the couple personality. And, you know, my dissertation, my doctoral dissertation was on conjoint therapy with a husband and wife, right?
Oh.
And how it really kind of removes any gender bias that occurs in traditional marriage counseling, which is done by one therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found that in addressing the couple personality as a couple ourselves, it's like almost, you know, we've done half the work already.
Yep. It's very economical.
That makes sense. It does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very interesting, because I'd never thought of that.
No. And to
I
do
mean, I'm aware of the effect and the impact we have, but I wasn't aware of why that is so. I thought it was just, as Fran said, the energy between us, which other people join on to.
You know what? A fun way to find out is try doing it by yourself.
we
We
do.
Yeah.
We
And you
don't.
can see the difference of what it's like when you have that the four of you together, the two and the two versus one and two.
Yeah.
And that's how we started working together, because we started out as individual therapists working with couples, and it's just, we so much prefer to work together. You can see so much more.
Yes.
Well, you feed off each other as well.
And there's
Yep.
4 eyes, 2 brains. It helps.
You know, and part of it is you're holding the space of the mother and the father, and part of it is you're holding the space of what it looks like to be role modeled a healthy relationship.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Very
I think that's really important what you just said. That says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And why it's so important to do it together.
So how would you describe imago therapy, and what are some of the things that you guys notice of why couples come to see you, and what are some of the patterns people really are struggling with today?
Well, they struggle with everything. Really, I think the biggest thing that I hear when people come in is we don't communicate properly, or we don't communicate at all, or we're very poor communicators, or whatever, some version of that.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be the biggest thing. And if you can get people to actually talk to each other and listen, which is the big thing about Imago,
Yeah.
then,
The dialogue.
it makes a huge difference.
Mm.
And people frequently say one to the other, I didn't know you thought that, or I didn't know this. That's what happens when I say such and such, because they never listen.
They listen to themselves, in order to respond quickly and defend, right?
I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned
I agree.
from Imago.
It's the listening. It's also learning, I put it very simply, to coming out of the crocodile brain into the frontal lobe, because you've got to be present. You have to attend and get the words right. That in itself is quite magical, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other therapy, if you want to hear more about encounter-centered, I think it's a graduation from Imago personally. It goes deeper and higher.
If you guys can tell us a little bit about that, that would be great.
Well, the main thing for me about encounter-centered, I think we're not allowed to call it therapy anymore, couples guidance, is to get people to their essence and to connect essence to essence.
It's a deep connection.
Right? And it's probably more spiritual, less of the mind. And it's more about reading each other. It's very often nonverbal. People sit together holding hands quite close. And we teach them to learn about the landscape of their partner's face, right? You can remember Stan loves doing that. And, slight change in the mouth, the tone. There's a little bit of other stuff that I've studied that I put in with it, but it's so simple. It's profound, it's deep. And there's exercises like
Crossing the bridge.
when I smell you, what I smell is.
Using the five senses.
Or when I look at you, what I see is. When I touch you, what comes up for me is, right? And they're very short. That's it. And the rest, and the connection and the energy that comes up is wow.
To watch people's faces when they do that is just staggering.
Yeah, because they don't even look at each other most of the time. Like, really explore that face. Do you see another pimple? I don't say wrinkle because that won't go down too well. But, do you see another this or another that? Also, we both use a lot of humor, right, in any therapy, if you want to call it. Yeah? But Stan's right. The main thing in Imago is the communication exercise. It does wonders. And the 2 words, zero negativity. Right? That in itself will transform a relationship. Are you trained in Imago? I don't want to be going.
Yeah, parts of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So zero negativity is no shaming, no blaming, no criticism, no sarcasm. Don't make other wrong. That in itself will transform a relationship. And then there's the Gottman stuff about the
Content.
5-1, yeah, and those 4 horsemen, yes. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, what is different between hot monogamy and encounter-centered therapy?
Well, hot monogamy focuses on the sexual side of the relationship. And it really is more, that comes out of Imago. The lady who, I don't call it designed, hot monogamy, is Pat Love, Dr. Pat Love. Do you know her?
No, we're not familiar with her.
Oh, she's a very tall, red-headed Texan
Excellent.
lady.
She's gorgeous.
And she is absolutely wonderful. She's gorgeous. She's been to Australia 2 or 3 times.
What's the difference?
But the difference between hot monogamy, I can't say the difference between hot monogamy and it's really focusing just on the sexual side of the relationship, which we specialize in, or I do particularly, Fran doesn't do that much of it now.
I do it in different ways.
Yeah, she does, because she's different. My wife's
Yeah.
different.
But there are exercises about couples' sexual desire discrepancy. The things you would come across anyway is just much more specific. Whereas in encounter-centered, I tell you what happens. People do get sexy just from doing, and often I'll say, okay, go find a room. Because they really see and feel each other. And it's not all about words. It's about energy and how they really connect essence to essence and how that helps me. Sometimes I do get angry, upset, frustrated with Stan. It's not always beautiful. It often is, but there are times when it's not. How I come back quite quickly is I remember his essence. Who he really is. And he's a loving being with the biggest heart who can give the best hugs. As soon as I remember that, and it comes quite quickly, I've forgotten what I was angry about. And I just want a hug and it's done and we move on, Or a while ago we would have used a dialogue. We don't. We might in the car in passing, but we don't really need it. We might mirror each other occasionally. And the thing with encounter couples is the bridge. So people sit together and it's about 3 invisible connectors.
Yeah.
The bridge is 1. There's the space and then there's the encounter. What happens when you cross the bridge? You don't meet halfway because you get a bit jammed. So there are ways in which you go right into somebody else's world really deeply.
Beautiful stuff.
Yeah. And that's different from Imago. It goes, I think, deeper, but not everyone's ready to be able to do something so intimate. It's really very intimate, right? And it's way less cognitive.
I find I usually don't get there until people have already been doing some Imago work for some time, because they just can't do it. There's too many blocks in the way.
Absolutely. And there needs to be a level of vulnerability, safety and vulnerability that's built before you can actually touch sexuality, I would imagine.
That's for sure.
Sometimes it's in the first session. It depends on the couple and how open they are. And for those that aren't, I agree, you have to wait. Timing is everything, isn't it?
Right. Absolutely.
What would be a way that you could describe what the goal is of the work that you guys do?
The goal?
Mm-hmm.
To help people realize the potential of their relationship, because they've got together because they want to be together, presumably initially. And I think a lot of people lose sight of their goal and it becomes almost functional. And as Fran said, I think before, if you want to have what you used to have, you've got to start doing what you used to do. And they lose sight of that. And to me, the aim is to get them into that wonderful, loving space, but with more depth than they had it when they first started, and to learn how they can do that. Yeah, as you would know, the tools are there for life. They're not just a temporary fix.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times we encounter couples that are afraid to go there. Because what we always say is that a committed partnership is the closest that you can be to another human being, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? And that's the highest potential. But as we know, Carl Jung talking about the shadow self, is that people are afraid to show that side, and especially to have a partner that's able to see that shadow self and still accept you, is the biggest risk.
That's right.
So you have to make it safe to show up.
Safety is
Safe to show up, take out the blame. I always say, gosh, aren't you lucky that you've had an issue that's brought you here? Because now you get to grow. For me, the object is always to grow. And
Yeah.
that may mean more together or away from. Okay. But it's all about growth. That's what we're here to do, learn and grow and love.
Absolutely. Right. Well, we go through this world alone, and, we die alone, and,
Yes.
our greatest potential is to have a partner that becomes a witness to our life.
And the person that you are bonded to can heal you the most, but they can also hurt you the most.
Oh, for sure.
Well,
Well, that's where your vulnerability is.
So
What would you guys say is the biggest challenges that couples run into, and maybe something that of a challenge that you guys face together as a couple as well?
I think it's boredom, flatlining, not growing. And I'm lucky I can get bored quickly. So I know straight away when there's an issue. So I'll deal with it. And it's the same with couples. They're stuck and they don't know how to get out, but they want to. And I think the greatest challenge is for those, there's usually one in a couple who doesn't want to grow, who's too ready to blame the other. So we got to work through that, and that can take a long time. We're not in a rush, and tell them straight up, it'll take whatever time it takes. It might be 6 weeks, might be 6 years. What are you willing to invest in your future?
I think also there's a lot of people in relationships who are in it for what they can get.
Yes.
What am I going to get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of realizing that it's what they give that makes the difference. I mean, if one person's giving, and the other's just taking, that's not going to work anyway. But if your attitude is, well, what can I give to improve this? What's my responsibility? How did I contribute to this difficulty or this challenge or this mess or whatever it is? Then you're asking the right questions, and then you can start facing on your responsibility. What can you do to make it better? Not point the finger at the other person, If only you did X, Y, Z, everything would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, of course, that's just not true anyway.
It also makes one person who's doing that the victim of the other, and they're disempowered. Yeah. So I said, look, do you want to be disempowered or empowered? It's your choice. If you want to be empowered, we can teach you. If you want to be disempowered and continue that, you can do that for free at home. And they usually pick the right answer.
It definitely creates an environment of competition. And, we see that a lot with some of the younger generations now, when they're starting to date, they're looking for what can you give me, and if that person ticks all the boxes and, then I'm willing to now open up and be in a relationship with you, where it just really doesn't work that way.
Not for long. I mean, I think it does start off that way.
Yeah.
That's again where growth comes in, that you learn there's more to that. I mean, initially you're going to be attracted by what you want from someone, at a young age. Of course, I was, he could cook, he could dance. Yay. My dreams came true. I don't have to cook. I still don't. Except when we were in lockdown. It was a bit worrying. I went into the kitchen. Because we couldn't get out of the house.
And we had a lot of lockdowns here, Mel. Yeah. The longest, if any place in the world.
We have the record. Yeah. So it's just as well we like each other, because, and a lot of couples don't. And in fact, lockdown was good. We learned more about it.
Talk about boredom. Yeah, during lockdown, there's a lot of boredom there. You have to find ways to be creative and, and find that excitement again.
Yeah, well, I'm good at that because I don't want to be bored.
One thing that we see is people who have had ended marriages in a very traumatic type of way where, things weren't handled properly. I don't know about your legal system, but our legal system's terrible in helping couples divorce. And they take years and money and distrust and all sorts of things to the point where people are afraid to get into a committed relationship again. And those people don't understand that potential that we're talking about, that you guys know, of what it's like. It's the highest sacred space you can be in on this planet, to be in a bonded, loving, safe, committed relationship with someone who cares about wanting the best for you as much as you care about wanting the best for them. And they want to stay with their, I'm going to keep my stuff over here and you keep your stuff over there, and we're going to pretend that we trust each other or that we care that much about each other. And we get that question a lot, like, why should I take that risk?
Yeah, well,
because it's the only way to get out of the mire and the mud that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you take smaller steps, smaller risks, right? You know, if you're not risking, you're not going to change, you're not going to grow. That's why.
yeah, nothing will
And
change.
you have to validate that it's difficult and all of that. Yes, it is. But, you know, it takes courage. And the fact that you're here, guys, shows me that you have courage. So take that little step, you know, and then another step. So it's our responsibility, I'm sure you know this, to create a safe space anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And within that space, it's amazing the risks that they do take, right? They often regress out of the room, but bit by bit, they do their homework and they practice, and they learn that risk-taking is exciting and scary. So don't take too big a step then. You generally get a second chance if the first one.
And the payoff is usually immediate.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. It's worth risking, right? Because you're here. So there's something you want to do with each other. So let's try this. And you know, even a dialogue's a risk. It's new. They have to be in a certain way. So I'd say that. This is a risk. It's a risk to listen, right? It's a risk to share. You may well hear things you haven't heard before. Some of them you'll like, some of them you may not like, but they won't be dumping, they'll be sharing, and we train how to do that, so it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a risk even to come into therapy or counselling.
It's huge.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
It has to be, because you don't know what you're going to, even if you've had counselling or therapy before, and a lot of people have, you don't know what's going to come up.
And I like what you were saying earlier, that one of the biggest obstacles is fear, right? Because most often couples make those mistakes because of fear.
Yeah.
You know, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection.
Yes.
They're the two big ones.
Yeah, that's understandable to be scared if you've experienced that, you know. But you know, I'm also trained in neuro-linguistic programming, and I say to them, you know, the past doesn't equal the future unless you do it exactly the same way. You know, it's not rocket science, but fear makes sense. It also means false evidence appearing real. I won't tell you the other one.
Well, Stan and Francesca, where can people learn more about the two of you and the work that you're doing and get more information?
Well, we have a website, but also we've been published in Forbes magazine, a bunch of other magazines online, and our website is relationshiprescueinstitute.com.au.
And we're on Facebook and also Instagram.
So we always like to end with this question. What is it that your partner does that you know they love you?
He cooks for me. That's the way he looks at me. That's the main one. He doesn't even have to say it. He's very romantic. When I run workshops, the guys hate hearing this, but I get breakfast in bed every morning. I do, every morning. And he massages my feet at night, whatever time it is. But it's the way he looks at me. He does. And he sees my soul. I'm going to tear up right now. Yeah.
Oh, I think for me, it's the fact that Fran touches me. physically as well as emotionally, because I was deprived of that as a child. Physical touch to me is so important. And if she just holds my hand, and we touch each other all day. People in the street stop us, literally. Have you guys just got married? I'm not kidding. We get
Yeah,
that
we do.
frequently. We're in shops or somewhere,
Public displays of affection.
and we'll just kiss each other, just like that, for no specific reason. And people find it very strange that two older people do that.
Why not? We've had more
I don't see
time.
any reason why not. To me, it's just spontaneous and natural. But the way she touches me really makes me feel loved.
I can get anything I want. I just have to, go. I guess.
Well, yeah, Francesca, we want to thank you so much for being on our podcast today. It's been really wonderful talking to you both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us.
Right back at you. It's lovely to meet you.
But we are going to put all the links to your website and Facebook on our show notes and everything once it comes out. Well, we want to thank all of you for joining us today on Couple Synergy. Our passion is in helping couples and people have happy and healthy relationships. And this podcast gives us a fun way of bringing our knowledge and expertise to you, our listeners.
Sharing stories is a way that human beings have been bonding and healing and growing since the beginning of time. We hope that by you guys sharing your story, it's enriched your lives and the lives of our listeners.
For all of you listening, please let us know how you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, please email us at contact@couplesynergy.com. For more information about Couple Synergy and our programs such as Relationship 101, the Home Study Course, the Couples Weekend Intensive, which is coming up April 20th and 23rd, and also October 12th and 15th in beautiful Colorado, and our premier coaching program called Couple to Couple. Look us up online at couplesynergy.com.
And if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please download it and share it. And thank you for listening.
Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.